Jey Uso's days within the Bloodline are forgiven and forgotten, and his future is still yet to be written. Where will main event Jey's career go next? Today, we will try and answer that, as we book the next 5 years of Jey Uso's WWE career. We start out at the 2024 Royal Rumble match. Jey would enter at number 15 and would make it all the way to the final 4 of the Rumble, along with his brother Jimmy Uso, Cody Rhodes and CM Punk. Jey would manage to eliminate Jimmy, however Solo Sikoa would appear and would land a Samoan spike on Jey before throwing him over the top rope, eliminating him from the match. Following the Rumble, Jey would appear on SmackDown before brawling with both Jimmy and Solo. On the next episode of Raw, Jey would demand a match with Solo Sikoa. Adam Pearce would appear on the stage and would announce that he's agreed with Nick Aldis to let Jey Uso and Solo Sikoa square off at the Elimination Chamber PLE in a no-holds-barred match. Jey and Solo would clash at Elimination Chamber in a brutal no-holds-barred contest. Jey would bring the fight to Solo, and after a hard-fought battle, he would walk out victorious. His victory would be cut short as his brother Jimmy would attack Jey after the match, before Solo would hit a splash to Jey through the announce table. Following the chamber, Jey's feud with his brothers would continue. Jey would continuously show up on SmackDown to fight Jimmy and Solo. General Manager Nick Aldis was sick of Jey showing up on his brand, so he would agree to put Jimmy in a match against Jey at WrestleMania to finally end the feud between the two brothers. At WrestleMania, it would be a battle of the brothers, as Jey Uso would face Jimmy Uso one-on-one. The two would have an awesome back and forth match. Solo would try to get involved several times throughout the match, but Jey would manage to defy the numbers game, defeating Jimmy at the grandest stage of them all, ultimately ending the feud between the two, for the time being at least. On the same night, Cody Rhodes would finish his story by defeating both Roman Reigns and The Rock in a triple threat match to win his first WWE Universal Championship. Jey would spend most of 2024 thriving on the Raw brand, teaming with Cody Rhodes in Cody's feud against Gunther and Imperium. Jey would challenge Gunther for the IC Championship at SummerSlam. Cody would be at ringside to prevent interferences from Imperium. Defying the odds, Jey would win the match, ending Gunther's reign and winning his first singles title in the WWE. Cody would continue his feud with Gunther, who is out for vengeance and wants the Universal Championship. Heading into 2025, Jey would enter the year still the IC champion. Jey would defend his title successfully against Imperium member Ludwig Kaiser at the Royal Rumble in a strong display to kickstart his year. Leading into WrestleMania, Jey would start a feud with number 1 contender Bronson Reed. Reed would be on a rampage to win the IC title, and Jey would need to pull out all the stops to successfully retain against Bronson. Bronson Reed would ultimately defeat Jey for the IC Championship on an episode of Raw in a fairly dominating performance. To rub salt in Jey's wounds, Bronson would put Jey through a table with a chokeslam. The following week, Grayson Waller would tease Jey on an episode of The Waller Effect, saying that Jey obviously could not put Bronson through a table, and there's no way he can beat a monster like Bronson Reed. Jey would take this as a challenge and would proceed to request a tables match against Bronson at WrestleMania, as he would be determined to get his payback against Reed, but also to prove his doubters wrong. At WrestleMania 41, Jey would face Bronson in a tables match for the IC Championship. With luck on his side, Jey would send Bronson crashing through a table to successfully win his second Intercontinental Championship. Following WrestleMania, Jey would be traded to SmackDown along with his IC Championship, meaning he would once again be on the same brand as his brothers, Jimmy Uso and Solo Sikoa, but also his cousin, Jacob Fatu, who had recently signed with WWE in early 2025 and recently emerged as the latest member of the Bloodline faction. The Bloodline has been without a leader since Roman left WWE after WrestleMania 40. Jimmy has since declared himself as the unofficial head of the table, but Solo and Jacob have never fully acknowledged Jimmy in that role. Throughout the summer, Jey would stay clear of the Bloodline, as he would be focused on defending his championship against the likes of Austin Theory and Damon Kemp. However, his path would soon cross with his family towards the end of the year, after Jimmy Uso would win an Intercontinental Championship number 1 contenders Battle Royal on SmackDown at the end of 2025. As 2026 arrived, Jey knew his match with Jimmy was soon approaching. After Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu would win the SmackDown Tag Team titles at the Royal Rumble, it was up to Jimmy to capture the Intercontinental Championship from Jey, which would ultimately get the Bloodline back to its feet and also to the top of WWE. At Elimination Chamber, Jey Uso would challenge Jey for his IC Championship. The two would have a great match, much like their clash at WrestleMania 40. Jimmy would come close to winning the title several times, but in the end, Jey would win the Battle of the Brothers to successfully retain his title. Following the match, Solo and Jacob would look at Jimmy with disgust, before jumping him in the ring. At first, Jey would not intervene, as he has not forgot what Jimmy has done to him and his career. The attack would soon become too much for Jey to stand by. Solo would set Jimmy up for the Samoan Spike, but to the shock of the fans, Jey would sprint to the ring, super kicking both Solo and Jacob, thwarting their attack and saving his brother. In the weeks following the Rumble, Jimmy would attempt to thank Jey and would try to apologise for all that he did to him. Jey would not accept his apology, as he doesn't think he can ever trust Jimmy again. On the final episode of SmackDown before WrestleMania, Solo and Jacob would corner Jey in the ring. In a situation similar to that of Jey Uso's at the Royal Rumble, Jey would be in danger of receiving a Samoan Spike. Before Solo could hit the Samoan Spike, Jey Uso would charge to the ring, saving Jey from the attack. Emotionally, Jey would give in, hugging Jimmy to the appreciation of the fans. Jey and Jimmy would reunite by challenging Jacob Fatu and Solo Sikoa to a match for the SmackDown Tag Team titles at WrestleMania 42. At WrestleMania, it would be all-out family warfare for the tag team titles, the Usos versus Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu. The match would be nothing short of a straight-up fight, with the referee barely managing to control the match. It was clear that the tag team chemistry between Jimmy and Jey has never left. Their tag team experience proved too much for Solo and Jacob, as the Usos would win the match and the SmackDown Tag Team titles. Following WrestleMania, the Usos would defend their tag team belts on SmackDown, feuding on and off with Solo and Jacob Fatu, as well as Pretty Deadly and the Creed brothers. Jacob Fatu would challenge Jey for the IC Championship at Extreme Rules and would actually win the match, picking up his first singles title in the WWE. Jey would try to regain his championship the following month at Money in the Bank, but he would be unsuccessful due to an interference from Pretty Deadly, who were the #1 contenders for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. Throughout the rest of the year, the Usos would defend their tag team championships, most notably against Pretty Deadly at SummerSlam and against Joe Gacy and Karrion Kross at Survivor Series. At the Royal Rumble, Gunther would successfully retain his WWE Universal Championship against Sami Zayn. Following the match, Gunther would take it too far by powerbombing Zayn through the announce table. Later in the night, Jey Uso would enter the Royal Rumble match. Jey would enter at number 29 and would go on to win the Rumble match for the first time in his career. Following the Rumble, Jey would set his sights on Gunther and his Universal Championship. Jey would make it his mission to not only capture his first world title in WWE, but also to avenge his friend Sami Zayn, who Gunther put out of action at the Royal Rumble. The feud between Jey and Gunther would intensify as WrestleMania 43 drew near. Jey would remind Gunther that he was the guy who ended his IC title reign almost 3 years ago, and promised him that he would be the guy to end his Universal Championship reign. Gunther would make things personal by also powerbombing Jey's brother Jimmy through the announce table during the build-up to WrestleMania. At WrestleMania 43, Jey Uso would challenge Gunther for the Universal Championship. Despite Jey defeating Gunther once before, the majority of the fans don't expect Jey to beat him again, as Gunther is even more dangerous and unstoppable than he was 3 years prior. Gunther would control the majority of the match, making it difficult for Jey to get in any offense at all. Gunther would have Ludwig Kaiser at ringside, who made things even more difficult for Jey, but Jey's brother Jimmy would be on hand to stop any Imperium interference. After a ref bump, Ludwig Kaiser would enter the ring to attack Jey. Jimmy would deter Kaiser with a superkick before both Usos would land a double superkick on Gunther. Jey and Jimmy would hit Gunther with a 1D before Jey would climb to the top rope, landing a frog splash to the champ. Jey would pin Gunther for the second time, ending his streak and winning his first world title in an emotional moment at WrestleMania. Following WrestleMania, Jey would dedicate his championship win to his friend Sami Zayn and would thank his brother Jimmy for helping him achieve his dream. Jey would defend his Universal Championship for the majority of the year and defend his SmackDown Tag Team titles with his brother Jimmy. His title reign would last all the way till that year's Hell in a Cell PLE in October, where he would be unsuccessful in his title defence against the returning Gunther, who was unbeatable for Jey this time. Following Hell in a Cell, Jey would focus on defending his tag team titles with Jimmy as the year came to its end. At the start of 2028, over on the Raw brand, Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods of the New Day, who have recently reunited after the disbanding of the team back in 2025, would win their 13th Tag Team Championship in WWE. In the weeks following the Royal Rumble, WWE would ask the fans to participate in a vote to determine who was the greatest tag team of the 21st century in WWE. The fans would ultimately vote the New Day as the greatest tag team. Offended by this, the Usos would appear on the stage, making it known that they think they should have won the vote. After a heated confrontation with their longtime rivals, the Usos would attack the New Day, turning heel in the process, which would be Jey's first heel run in 5 years. The two teams would feud over the next couple of months and would ultimately challenge one another to a match at WrestleMania. The Usos would suggest a winner-takes-all tag team match for both the Raw and SmackDown Tag Team Championships. The New Day would agree, but they would up the stakes even further by suggesting that the losing team must never team again. The Usos would agree, and the match would be set for WrestleMania. At WrestleMania, the two teams would clash one final time. At the end of this match, one team will never tag again. The Usos would start the match well, landing a few double team moves to the Raw Tag Team Champions. The New Day would get some offense in themselves, bringing the fight to the Usos. The pace of the match would start to quicken, with both teams pulling out all the stops to survive as a tag team. Jey would accidentally superkick Jimmy after Kofi dodged out of the way. Jey would turn round to a Trouble in Paradise from Kofi. Kofi would tag Xavier, who would land a diving elbow drop to Jey, but Jey would manage to kick out at 2. Desperate for a way to win, the New Day would land a 1D of their own, which would finally be enough to put Jey away for a 3 count. Kofi and Xavier would win the tag team titles, and the Usos' tag team legacy would come to an end. Emotionally, the New Day would show nothing but respect to Jey and Jimmy after the match. The Usos would be hesitant at first, but in the end, the two teams who have so much shared history would hug it out to the applause of the fans. Following WrestleMania, Jey and Jimmy would venture into singles roles once again. Jey would remain on the main roster with an ambition to become world champion once again, and to be main event Jey one more time. He has one chapter left in his career, and he believes it starts at the 2029 Royal Rumble.